Hi everybody, most of you of course know me. I'm Steve Philion. I'm professor of sociology and the chair of the sociology department. Today is today's panel with the Sociologists of Minnesota conference is featuring four people who were involved in a protest action that took place at Golden Plump corporate headquarters just down the road on Roosevelt Avenue and roughly around 33rd or so. That took place in April, protesting the health and safety conditions that workers on the line face, and also discrimination on the basis of religion and lack of religious accommodation for Muslim workers on the line. That action was a long time in the making, and as part of this class that I taught last semester called Practicing Policy, Sociology 460 and 560, I had my students, as part of their class project, get involved in a movement that involved organizing low-wage workers. Now, it's not an accident that I asked them to be involved in that, because I happen to chair an organization in St. Cloud called the Greater Minnesota Workers Center, which organizes low-wage workers. It has a focus on immigrant refugee workers, but not only immigrant refugee workers, but all low-wage workers. But in this particular case, what the students ended up getting involved in was a case of low-wage workers who are immigrant refugees in St. Cloud, working at a poultry plant in Cold Spring, run by Golden Plump. And they learned about the issues that were involved in that campaign from Ahmed, who is the lead staff organizer at the Greater Minnesota Workers Center, and is responsible for organizing poultry workers at GMT and in the Greater Minnesota area. He came to our class in the beginning of January, or actually towards the end of January, I think it was, right? And introduced to the students about what was happening at this plant and the workers' committee that had organized and was trying to do something about the health and safety issues. And our mission as a worker center is not to solve problems for the workers, but to help the workers strategize and organize themselves to defend basic labor rights in the workplace. The students took an interest in the presentation that Ahmed gave about the conditions of the workers and identified that as the project that they wanted to get involved in. And it happened that in April, when the weather was getting warmer and we had collected numerous interviews with workers that with which we ended up writing a report about the conditions of the workers in the plant, that we were now ready to go to GMP at the corporate headquarters and stage a mass demonstration demanding that they meet with the workers' committee and address the issues of health and safety concerns that they had, in addition to religious accommodation issues. And so with that, what I wanted to do was, first, let me just introduce the panelists again. Ahmed, the lead staff organizer from St. Cloud State, he's a St. Cloud State University graduate with only 3 degrees. Herne is I think a senior in the sociology program. She's also this year's honorable mention winner, by the way, of the Carolyn Rose paper competition, and she wrote that paper for this class. Madilyne Wegener is also a sociology major, and in her senior year, as is Josefina Abdullah in her, I believe, final semester, I'm sorry to say. And so we have 3 students who were the most active in putting together this student level of support for the campaign. And they're also the most active members, I should mention, of the SOC club, the Student Organized for Change club. They're not the only ones, but certainly in the last few years have certainly been very critical in making that organization much more dynamic and active and activist oriented. So part of what I do in this class is emphasize the importance of sociology in not just studying movements and strategies of movements and theories of how movements operate, but actually going and getting involved in a movement and learning from that involvement in the movement how movement organizing takes place and what work goes into movement organizing, and also to analyze the gaps between ultimately the intents of our actions and our outcomes. So all of that was part of what they were doing, what they'll talk about when they're presenting. But I'm going to begin first with just a video from that protest in April.
I think I already had it up. There you go. Workers occupy land. Yeah. No. Oh, yep.
Each year, thousands of workers are killed and millions more are injured. 150 people die every day from hazardous conditions on the job. Thank you for coming up here in such large numbers to show support for workers in Golden Club. The working conditions are not safe, they're not healthy, and they're not fair. And on top of that, they're also intimidating. We stand in solidarity with GMP workers who work in unsafe conditions with unfair hiring practices, poor wages, and so much more.
That's how I lost my job. Right now, I'm seeing medical services and being seen by a doctor.
We're here at Golden Plum, or GMP as it's known for short, because we just got done conducting a survey of over 50 workers that confirmed that they see there are very serious issues of health and safety violations and also religious discrimination. And the organizing committee of workers from GMP would like to sit down with GMP management and discuss these issues and find a way to make work at GMP safe and healthy.
I'm a student at St. Cloud State University, and I want all of the workers at GMP and other meatpacking places to know that students care about the St. Cloud community, and we care about workers that are suffering physically, mentally, and emotionally from GMP's unsafe workers' conditions. We stand in solidarity. Thank you for showing up today, everyone. It's a great event.
So, good afternoon or mid-morning. I'll say good morning. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you today. And just to level up, I want to say until last year I was a student here at St. Cloud State. So I'm the lead organizer with Greater Minnesota Worker Center. And I kind of discovered this organization accidentally a few years ago when I moved to St. Cloud. I moved here in 2012 from Chicago. And I had some experience, organizing in Chicago around immigration issues. getting voters out during the elections, and also organizing Chicago cab drivers to fight back some of the abuses they were facing from the city police. The city of Chicago was in a huge budget deficit, and one way to recover or get some refunds, to fill the budget shortfalls was to go after the Chicago cab drivers, some 10,000 drivers, and send them all kinds of citations, even in the mail. So when I moved here, I was trying to get involved in the community and get something to do. And I saw one of the former students of Steve, Abdullah, who graduated from Sociology program in St. Cloud State, putting a flyer in one of the Somali coffee shops in St. Cloud on the north side. Actually, we're going to be holding a rally in the same location today. And I read it, and he said, it was, I think, around January 2013, and he said, hey, we're organizing this event, please come. And I showed up, and I never looked back. And at that time, we were an association. We were a group of people that came from different industries, from academics, from labor, from community, from faith. And for the most part, Steve was the one who was responsible in bringing those people together. It was his idea. It was an extension of the research he was doing on immigrant workers. So he wanted to move that a notch higher. And so he got all of us involved. And the first 2 years I served on the board, and in 2014, December 2014, I accepted a position as a staff organizer with Greater Minnesota Workers Center. And so, over the years, we did, many things, fighting for, raising the minimum wage, fighting temp agencies that were placing workers in jobs that they do not have job security. They would be working as a temporary worker for like 7 months, 9 months without a guarantee of getting full-time or permanent employment. And we have been successful in some of the things we did. Wage theft was another thing we did, we fought on. And just this year actually, we happened to organize an event on April 28th. That's on Workers' Memorial Day. And the goal was to memorialize workers who got injured at the workplace or who died on the job. And labor as a movement is dependent on the goodwill of people who want to be outside of themselves, people who want to act and do some things. There is no labor or organized labor without people coming together. And some of the one of the biggest regrets I have is I did not study sociology, and I did not sit in Steve's class, or I have not been a member of the Student Organized for Change. That would have really been critical for me in learning a lot of the theory and the practice of this. But these young women on my right side, well, I think the lucky ones who had that opportunity. But one of the documentaries that left really a lasting impact on me was a documentary called Colton, USA. It was, I think, in 1960s, 1970s, and it happened in Kentucky. Workers, protesting or striking for improvements in the workplace in coal mine industry. And just from the theory and from some of the work I did, and just moving here and being able to get involved with Greater Minnesota Workers and organize this event, I think that was really an amazing thing. And we had to look for partners, and we had to look for partners that were really creative and that were really passionate and that really had the self-drive. And so Steve invited me to speak in one of his classes, I believe Sociology 460, right? Yeah. And so that was about 2 or 3 months before we did the event in April. And so I explained to the students what Greater Minnesota Workers Center is and what we do and what we are planning for. And that kind of got some of the students' interest. And as we planned for the event, I had several meetings with Emily and Maddie and Josefina and some of there are other team members. You saw some of their names here on the board. And so we met continuously, and we developed the strategies and plans, and we came up with roles and activities. So some of the roles they played were coming up with science, and also the video that you have seen, they were responsible for contacting UTDS and getting them on board. It's a lot of small efforts here and there. We had about 60 people show up at that event, but it's a lot of excitement looking back, but going into planning that event, there were a lot of scary moments and unknowns and how this is going to do and how this is going to happen and who's going to do this and so. But I'm always grateful for the support and for the passion of these student leaders here, and that's when I look where I say I wish I were you. I was in that program because they were getting the theory and the academic and the practice and the theory part, but they're also getting the practice out in the community. And it took a lot of responsibility off my shoulders, and they said, Ahmed, we got this, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It was the first time we did something together, so I did not have a lot of experience working with them, so I had to keep on checking on them. But they really, each time I checked on them, they really proved me that they were more than capable of doing this, and finally it showed in the work. They spoke, they did the signage, and they were holding signs, and at the rally, they were doing worker petitions at the event, and they were doing basically so many things behind the scenes that we take the credit for, but they really did the hard work. And so the goal of the workers of the event, the Workers' Memorial Day, was, as I mentioned, to memorialize workers that got injured or that got killed on the job. But also, we were making it more local to St. Cloud. We did the action outside of Boland plant, which is a poultry processing plant, and it's actually the leading producer of premium chicken in the Midwest. So it's a really huge company. In 2014, their revenue was close to 500 million. I bet this time it's close to 800 million because they have a lot of demand for their product, and because of that demand, the workers there face a lot of challenges. Line speed is really, it's like very crippling. When you ask workers, they describe the line speed as raging river, and workers are treated like they are really disposable, that they have no rights. Workers tell us we did a survey and we published a 25-page report that we released on this day, on April 28th. And if you look at the report, based on what workers we interviewed told us that they are not allowed to use the restroom. Like at most, they can go to the restroom once or twice a week. And if they request to use the restroom more than that, they are being asked to get a medical note from their primary care provider. And even when they get that medical note, they tell us still we are not allowed to use the restroom. So, that lack of respect generally, and when there's a conflict at the workplace, workers tell us that the management doesn't solve our problems fairly. So it doesn't matter if I was the aggressor, they would fire the two people who had conflict. And so it's a very precarious job situation or employment situation. And these are workers who work from 8 to 12 hours a day, 5 to 6 weeks, 6 days a week. And these are workers like the worker we interviewed here, Omar, who was fired from Genio, experienced huge safety concerns. Omar worked there for 2 years and 8 months, and he got injured on his right hand, the fingers and the shoulder because of the repetitive nature of the work. And as he told us, he was informed that you are as good here only when you're healthy. If you're injured, if you cannot be as productive, then we don't need you here. So workers tell us that these companies, when we get injured, they don't put us on light duty, even when we have a recommendation from our medical provider. They tell us that, they would pressure you to quit. And if you don't quit, then they will create situations to force you to quit. So health and safety was really a huge concern. as workers told us, and that's, that confirmed the report we published and released it on the same day. You can Google this, it's on our website, on Greater Minnesota Workers Center's website, GMWC.org. And so the report is titled, Striving for a Fair and Just Workplace. And so if you go on our website, you'll see that. If you go on St. Cloud Times or just Google it, you'll also be able to see that. So health and safety is really a huge thing, not just for workers who really get the bad end of the baggage, but also for consumers like you. And here's one of the things: if the workers tell us if we cut ourselves because they have to use knives and cutting machines, some of them, we can't stop the line, and we have to keep on working until we get a replacement. That could take from 10 minutes to 15 minutes to 30 minutes to an hour. So if you are bleeding, you still have to do the job because it's a moving line, and you can pass the blood and the pathogens that are contained in the blood to the food. And so there's a research that's done by a professor called Celeste. She teaches at the university in it's not Celeste. She's a professor at Johns Hopkins University. I got to meet her last year at a conference in Washington, D.C. She said 20,000 Americans die every year of because of diseases that are contracted through consuming chicken meat and poultry meat. And she said it's because of the pathogens that are passed from human beings to the blood, and then from the blood to the healthy human beings. And she has been trying to raise that with Food and Drug Administration and other state and federal agencies that regulate this. But she said, and she published a report on this, and you can cite this online, that she's trying to create an awareness on this, say 20,000 across the United States. But for these federal agencies, that's just a small number. It's not a crisis level number, but when you look at it, it's really huge. One is too many. 20,000 per year dying because of illnesses or viruses that are passed down to human beings through the blood of a worker on the chicken. I think that should be raising a lot of concern for consumers like us. And there are other things too. When there are research that have been released by other organizations like Oxfam America of workers wearing diapers to work at some of the chicken processing plants. So this is interconnected. It just doesn't happen in St. Cloud or in Minnesota, but it happens across the United States, and it takes people of goodwill, like these students, and like the academics that provide them the education and the instruction, people who do the research, and people who do audit, people who do organizing, to change this industry and to change other industries that exploit workers for their labor, but don't care about the welfare of workers. And some of the women in the video you saw right now are single moms. They are the breadwinners in their family, and they had everything to lose, but they were fearless. They spoke at the event, and they presented the report. They helped us present the report to the executives at Golden Plum, and they still work there. So, you could still fight for change and still be insured to have a job the following day. They could fire you. You don't have any insurance against that. But they know if that happens, then they're gonna put themselves in more trouble. I don't know how I'm doing with time, but the day after we released this report about health and safety, just the day after, I believe we released the report on Thursday. On Friday, there was a chemical spill at the plant, and the plant closed it down. There was like, I don't remember the exact number, but it was something like 150,000 tons of chemical spill at the Golden Plum. So it just confirmed what we released in the report, what workers told us, and we compiled into that report about health and safety. Some people, having endless common cold and flu and things like that because of chemical exposure, because the chicken has to be dipped in ammonia and other chemicals in part because they want to preserve the meat for a long time. So, but you know, the chicken gets dipped in the chemical and then it goes through the other side and then someone is standing on the other side to handle it. And so, you know, I have seen workers who got, you know, skin discoloration, they lost their skin color. I've seen workers who lost their nails. They had beautiful nails when they started working there, but because of the chemicals, they lost their nails. If you look at their nails, you think they had fungi, untreated fungi for like 20 years or something. And, you know, workers cutting themselves because of the speed of line. Workers telling us that, hey, you know, sometimes I think it's the line that's moving. I don't know sometimes if it's me who's moving or if it's the line that's moving. So there are those things, and I think it takes all of us to fight for change and to create change. And there's no labor without organization. So what Greater Minnesota Workers Center has been doing is organizing workers, especially low-wage workers in central Minnesota, workers that do not necessarily have the voice or representation. Workers, and we are providing them education as well, trainings on workers' rights, on health and safety, etc., on leadership development. And we were also lobbying with them and on their behalf at the state capitol. So we take them down to the state capitol to testify at committee hearings. And sometimes we do that on their behalf. So for this work to continue, it needs people like you, people who have the knowledge, people who have the understanding, people who have the passion to get out and help out. So if you guys are interested in, you know, we have the students that come in and volunteer with us or do internship. If you guys are interested in, just join this organization, SOC, or join Greater Minnesota Workers Center. And, you know, 2 of the 3 staff we have right now graduated from this school. 3 of the 4 staff this organization hired the last 2 years graduated from St. Cloud State. And we had students who did internship with us. So there's opportunity out there to get experience, to help out, to work for Greater Minnesota as well. So I'm not guaranteeing you a job right now, but you know, long term there's that opportunity for you because we are growing. In just 2 years, we hired 3 staff. So there's an opportunity for us to grow as well. So thank you.
So we're just going to talk about kind of our part in the whole scheme of things. As you see, we had quite a lot of other students helping us too. It wasn't just us 3.
You're not sure.
Yep, you are. So this is kind of the flyer that we passed out. He kind of explained what the event was, so I'll just say that a big part of our duty was also just passing out flyers, making sure the students like really knew that it was happening. So our mobilizing strategies, we divided into committees just because we did have a rather large group. There was about like 8 of us or something. So I thought we'd divide into committees. So some people would focus on talking to like UTVS and the Chronicle and stuff, and some of us would talk like make posters, and some would design like this PowerPoint and everything. How we got the word out, we decided on student organizations that we thought would agree with like what we're doing, and we went and sought them out and told them about the event. We handed out flyers, and we also tabled at the Global Goes Local conference for it, and also presented at it last year to talk about this event. How we chose student orgs, we chose organizations that were liberal and like-minded, and that had an interest in immigrant rights. And then we stayed in contact with Ahmed, so just meeting with him all the time and like making sure that we were all on the same page. It's helpful.
So something to think about when you're organizing, especially a specific action, is what are the goals, what are the outcomes you're looking for? And so obviously one of the main goals of the action itself was to share a list of demands with GMP and to give workers this form of action and collective togetherness against a corporation which is still not treating them fairly. But on an individual group level, just our class, we were hoping to get 20 to 30 people to come, and the event had more than 60 people about. So how we met that goal was a lot of breaking up in the committees, tabling a lot. In Atwood, Sam, who isn't here right now, he actually graduated last spring, but him and I tabled 3 days a week for about 2.5, 3 weeks before the event. And then Emily and I had a table at the Global Goes Local conference. And so handing out flyers, posting them all around campus, reaching out, making face-to-face connections with students, letting them know about the event, and taking down the information so that we could follow up with them and email them before the event was very useful for us.
So, yeah, talking about the Global Goes Local conference, it's just a conference that is put on every year at St. Cloud State. So we had a presentation there. Some of us talked about our papers for the class, and then some, like Maddie, talked about our event and how we were gonna go about that. And then we organized carpools, and that helped us try to get to our goal as well. Just because a lot of students don't have cars, so telling people, if you really want people to go to an event, you have to go to them and say, well, I'll pick you up at this time and we'll drive together, I'll get you there. And that was really important. We did follow-ups with student orgs and people, so we made sure that once we were contacting people, we got their numbers, got their emails, and contacted them again. And just reminding friends that their presence is important. It's important to be a body in this situation. Some sociological concepts that we kind of applied to this event. Well, first we kind of thought about how this is precarious work. The workers don't have security, and just because in our system of capitalism, there's always more workers to hire. It's really hard when we do go out there and tell people you should go stand up and talk, because it's easy for them to get fired. They always have more people to just replace them. It was really important that they had the Greater Minnesota Workers Center to support them in those times, because then they can pressure them back and say that it's not right, that and if they can't get them to keep that job, you guys find them other jobs usually, right? Or help them,
or we
help protect them. So it's just nice to have that protection.
We have rallies. If a worker gets fired, we'll have a rally, like in Super America last year. A worker didn't get fired, but she got her hours reduced very significantly, like 20 hours, like 2 hours a week, 4 hours a week. They put her on an overnight shift, Thanksgiving evening, and it's like the most dangerous time to be working. And it's like a very small young woman, and she was basically ready to quit. We said, well, before you quit, why don't we go to that Super America and get out the community and do a demonstration right there and put pressure on them and let them know that we're not going to put up with this, that we're not going to tolerate their taking away her hours, and the community's got her back. And we went right to the store. We had a big rally, and we went right into the store as well. We confronted the manager, and he actually basically gave us very cold stares. I was part of the committee that went in and confronted the manager, and he just basically acted like we had no place to be there, but you could tell like he was also very aware of our presence and very concerned about it. We even marched right in front of the store, which technically is against the law. You're only allowed to march on sidewalks, but I said, let's just take this crowd and go right in front of the store and let them see us, because there were no police that had been called, and so that there was no reason not to up the ante, as it were, and make it very clear to him that we're a social force and we're serious about protecting workers who are just doing what they have the right to do in this country, is to stand up for their basic right to, express their concerns about the work conditions in the place. And as a result, she got her hours back. As a member, she got more than her hours back. She thought that might have been even the strategy on the part of the company to kind of set her up, to give her more hours to make a mistake, and then they could fire her. But at the end of the day, that wasn't what happened. But that's what we do if we face that kind of situation where a worker is retaliated against. The company knows we'll come right back with the community, and we'll make their life difficult. We'll publicize it and make sure that it's not something that they do again.
So that was.
And also, we filed
That's right.
yeah, you're gonna say that.
Oh, no, you go ahead. You did.
Yeah, so we also filed a complaint against the company, unfair labor practices, with the National Labor Relations Board. So that scared them to the core as well.
So that was really important. When we talk about especially immigrants who are working these low-wage jobs, you have to think that without citizenship, and even with it, but especially without it, you do end up facing a situation where you lack certain rights, and you also lack opportunities, and you feel threatened, and like, you just feel like you can't stand up, you don't have the right to stand up against these companies.
And if I could just add, I mean, the concept of citizenship here is used very loosely, so it's not just referring to whether you're documented or undocumented. For most of the Somalis in St. Cloud, documentation is not a problem. They're refugees, and they eventually they are on the path to citizenship and get it in a period of time. But it's the quality of the citizenship, and what we've seen in the last few weeks, of course, reflects that they're treated as a pariah population in St. Cloud. They're treated as a very suspect population, and so that all the more adds to the attitudes of managers towards them as workers, as less valuable than other workers. And so that's also part of the way in which we're thinking about citizenship here, is that it's not just a matter of a paper, but also what kind of citizenship does a group have? Is it substantive citizenship or just formal citizenship? So in the case of Somalia, it's really something in between formal and substantive.
And then just one other sociological point is that when we talk about these organizations, rather than just fighting social inequality, which obviously is a large problem, like the attitudes people have towards you as an immigrant or a low-wage worker, you're always going to face like social inequality and like attitudes that do affect your life. It's really important to actually face the economic inequality, which is what this organization does and what we participated in, because what's really going to make their life or break it is having a job, having money. Like, there's just no way to get around it. Like, if you don't have money, then your quality of life is nothing, it's gone. So that's why it's so important to fight that.
And with meatpacking companies and industries, the wages that they pay are fairly higher, the most unskilled jobs. Like if you don't have a lot of formal education, it's a decently paying job compared to other opportunities, but the amount of risk involved, physical, emotional risk, the compensation is not anywhere near the amount of risk that employees are putting in. And so a lot of people depend on this job because it is higher wage than your basic entry-level, little education job, but the company uses that against workers kind of as a way to threaten them, saying, you're not going to create problems, you're not going to complain if you're hurt, because we know that this is a decent paying job compared to what else you'll find, but we're still not going to compensate you appropriately for the work that you're doing, and we're still not going to protect your safety, we're still not going to respect your religious needs, we're still not going to respect your need to literally use the restroom. And so the company, it knows what it's doing, and Golden Plump GMP has made that clear in the sense they've made the shift from calling themselves Golden Plump to GMP. That was mostly a PR move, because Golden Plump has gotten flack in the past for similar things. They know what they're doing and they know how they're manipulating workers, and there's just a lack of care for their workers, because in my mind it's a matter of profits over people.
So, some barriers that we met. There was a lot of challenges organizing and like trying to get people to go there. So, in general, inability to gain hard commitments was one of our biggest problems. A lot of people were so interested about the event, but it was hard to get them to actually say, yes, I'm definitely going to go. The time of the rally, it was good for the rally because it was like lunchtime, and so people were going through, and like there's a lot of cars. But for students, it's like right during class, so that was hard to get student involvement.
An exam time. Exams are around the corner.
Yeah, and it was
Yep.
like near finals.
It was like a week or two before finals.
Yeah, and then there was some group schedule problems. It was hard just because we were a large group. Like getting us all together was difficult. Now you get to look at pictures. Overall, it was a success. So we made most of these signs. Compliment them if you want. I'm trying to. It's not working. Wait.
Another part of when you're doing actions is bringing the company a list of demands. There we go. And so what's important about doing actions is having a physical purpose. And so the Greater Minnesota Workers Center, what I think was great is that they conducted the survey, which pretty much said these are the facts. You can't argue with it. It's just not people being greedy or wanting more. Like, these are the facts. This is the reality of your company's conditions in their meatpacking centers. And so bringing in a list of demands is extremely important because it lets the company know why you're out there. And so if they want to, they can create those changes. And while they were bringing in the list of demands, we had people continue to protest outside of it. So you send kind of your core little pack, and they go in and bring the list of demands. And the rest of the people at the action, we stayed outside, and we continued to protest and put pressure on the company publicly.
I think just having that media coverage is important, especially for people who like drove by and they're like, what was that? I couldn't really stop. So once they like go home and say like, oh, I kind of saw that, and they like look it up again, or if they just come across it in the news, then they're finally aware of this problem. They see that's what was happening, this is what is the issue, and it just allows more of the community to know about it. There's the list of demands delivered. Yep.
That picture's kind of deceptive actually, because as Ahmed mentioned, 2 or 3 of the workers who had just come off the line, and I believe 2 of them were women, 1 was a man, went up with me and actually handed the letter to this woman. They had a security guard there, but we had access to you can see him in the mirror. But other than that, we had no security issues. I was amazed we could get into the room, or into the office, or into the building. I thought they'd have it shut down, so I was triply thrilled. I've been there before. I knew exactly how to get to their office on the elevator, and so we had very easy access to the receptionist. The receptionist was a little bit anxious, but we just explained to her, we're dropping off this letter, please give it to the CEO and ask him to respond to us, and he did. But it was the workers that actually handed it to her, and what was significant about that was, now Ahmed can confirm this, is that we had assumed that we were not going to ask any present workers to speak at that rally. We were only going to have people like Omar speak because he was a former worker and had been fired, so he had nothing to risk. But that day, the workers that Ahmed had called, who were presently working there, came up with a number of reasons why they couldn't show up for the event. And so last minute we were like, well, I guess we'll just have to rely on whatever former workers are here. But there were, like Ahmed said, these women workers and 1 man who had just come off the shift, and they wanted to speak at the rally. And that kind of really shifted the momentum of that event from the community and former workers speaking to workers who are currently working there, taking the risk to speak publicly to the media and to the company about their work conditions, and being willing to organize about it, being willing to risk their jobs to do this. So that was a really big turning point, and it's what's now transitioned us to getting workers to sign petitions asking for a meeting with the company, and now putting their names down in paper publicly asking for a meeting with the company. And we're anticipating sometime in October or very early November at the latest having another rally at GMP. They did respond to our letter and told us they would not meet with us, but we were just triply thrilled that they even responded to us, because they could have ignored us completely. They responded to our letter from the CEO, and now we're collecting petitions from workers, and that's a big step. And one other thing just to mention is what you see here largely were Somali workers, but recently we've finally been able to hire a Spanish-speaking worker, and there are many Spanish-speaking workers at GMP as well. There are divisions between Latino workers and Somali workers, and a lot of that is exploited by the bosses. And what we're trying to do now is to bring together Latino and Spanish and Somali workers as part of this workers committee, to bring them together to see if the real problem is not each other, but those who have power in that company that makes their work conditions the way that they are, and the shared problems that they have. Which is not to say that they don't have different problems or they don't have some conflicts, but those conflicts are not as big as the problem they have with their boss. And so our next step in late October or early November will be to repeat this rally, and you're more than welcome to show up and show support for it.
And also, we are collecting consumer petitions.
And that's right, we have consumer petitions.
So if you guys want to help with that, we'll put you in the leadership. You'll be the captain.
Anybody want? I know you have to run the class, so if you do, any questions for any of the panelists?
Are you done?
It's okay. I'll just show the rest of these pictures.
Anybody have a question you want to ask, or
Here's us.
there they are?
We're not protesting IRET, but it looks like it.
That's,
But we could protest them too, because there's problems.
any questions?
Thanks for coming.
Okay.